It is Tuesday, so y'all know what time it is. Tony is joining us, standing in at a nice 6'2", 195 pounds. How we feeling today?
6 foot 295. Christ.
Nah, 6'2", 195. Nah, I wanted to
Okay,
do you like
six
I wanted
two
to do
one.
you like that.
Okay,
I wanted to do you
six
like
two
that.
195. Okay, that's fair.
I was like,
That's fair.
oh shit.
I
Um,
cannot imagine being 6'2". That changed everything for me.
same for me. Other way going around, but that shit would be way different. Oh man. So Um, I started off the show today, and I hit on the topic that Roger Goodell last week said the NFL is not competing with the NBA or Major League Baseball; it's competing with Apple and Google. And I'm like, it's a wild statement in like the history of sports. No league has ever been so far ahead of it. Like even if you go back to the '70s where baseball was the big sport, the '90s was the NBA, and the NFL probably mid 2000s, probably definitively 2010 is when it started to separate itself.
hmm
But he is right. Like the NFL is just playing an entirely different game. When do you feel like there was clear separation where it was like, all right, the NBA was close, and now it's like, even if it's second place, there's clearly some distance there between that and the NFL.
Um, that's a great question. Where I can look at it and say definitively, this is where the shift happened and the NFL lapped the NBA was when there was a global pandemic and the NFL went on as business as usual, and
Yeah,
they they started their season on time and ended their season on time.
yeah,
And nobody really gave them any shit for it. It's like, well, oh, okay, sure, why not? And the NBA had to close down shop. They had to start up shop and fucking a literal bubble down in Disney, and the league hasn't really been the same since. We
yeah.
love the NBA and we enjoy what's going on in the NBA, but it hasn't really been the same since. And I'm sure from a numbers standpoint, we talk about like money and viewership and all that good business. I'm sure that changed even before that. But just from like a cultural standpoint, I can really look at that 2020 year and say, okay, the NFL really established themselves as king of everything. And then when you listen to what Goodell said, as far as like we're competing with Apple and Google, like he's right. Like, I mean, like they're clearly not Apple and Google, but like
Mm-hmm.
he the way that they dominate their landscape, which is sports and entertainment, is so far ahead of everybody. And that's NBA, that's that's NBA, that's MLB, UFC, WWE, whoever you want to say. They dominate it so largely that it is not close when you talk about sports and entertainment. And that's not necessarily a good thing either, to be clear to everybody listening.
That's
That's not
football's
that's
got
not
some
a good
football's got
thing.
some drawbacks. Like
That's
it's
not a good thing, but the reality of the matter is that he's right. And what I'll also throw in here on the back end is that we are about to see a lot of nasty business now that they have this deal with ESPN. And that's going to change everything when we talk about the transparency of sports media, when we talk about the gambling aspect of it. It is a very nasty thing that is going to happen from that deal, but the NFL will remain king through it all.
no, that's a fact. I brought up, and I don't think it's this simple, but I do think it matters. And take the humanity out of this for a second, because one of these people is a nasty human being. But I do feel like one of the reasons why we started to have a gap between the major sports, and hockey I know the least about as far as four major sports here, the commissioner gap is probably bigger than it's ever been. You kind of joked about it. You tweeted when he first made this. You're like, David Stern would never. And I kind of believe that. I do feel like when it went from Stern, Manfred, like Goodell started to lap the other commissioners, where it's like, for example, everybody's Pro Bowl or All Star game sucks, right? Like no one really likes watching the Pro Bowl. No one really likes watching the All Star game at the moment. They've deteriorated into these things where like these guys are making so much money, they've become less popular to watch than they were in the early
hmm
2000s. Goodell kind of took that in the NFL and they rebranded. Now, I don't think the flag football game is perfect, but they moved so much quicker. And I do think some of that is associated with Goodell, whereas baseball has been historically criticized for they move at a snail's pace and they're not willing to change. The NBA is still, they've done little things to kind of to kind of mess with the All-Star game, but it still hasn't really been that. Even stuff like the skills challenge and the dunk contest, which were real historically like real big parts of the NBA and its story, it's like we just don't care about that anymore. And so I do think
For sure.
Goodell lapping the other commissioners, it's not that simple, but I do think it plays a big part.
No,
Um,
I can agree with that. And last thing I'll say on that is that, you know, we see out of we see the lack of for lack of better terms, we see the lack of respect he has for Adam Silver because the NFL running on Christmas just would it wouldn't have happened under David Stern. Be that
Agreed.
because Stern wouldn't allowed it, or there was just much more respect, but on Goodell's end toward a guy like David Stern who literally grew and built the NBA from the ground level.
Mm-hmm.
It just wouldn't have happened. Like it just wouldn't have happened.
No, I agree. I think the NBA is one. If there's a league that's going to close the gap, I do think the NBA has a chance. Not necessarily for something that Adam Silver's going to do miraculously, but as we start to see some of these guys like Shea just signed, and he's going to be 60 plus million, and by the time Luka gets to his contract extension, he's probably going to be the first $1 million per game player, and that will start to change a little. Like you will have guys who make the decision. Like if you're a 5-star athlete, like guys who can play multiple sports and have their picks, you are going to see guys who are like, I can make $1 million a game and not get my head knocked off. And I do think that will help the NBA. It should help baseball too because there's literally no salary cap, but niggas don't like baseball. I don't know what to tell them. Where do you draw the line on guys playing in preseason? So obviously you get one or two horror stories a year. The Chargers unfortunately just lost Rashawn Slater. Obviously that was in practice, not a game, but they just lost him for the entire season. And you're always going to have those kind of stories because it's football. It's a very fast, physical game. Like these guys are signing up to have their body at risk pretty much every day they're employed. Where do you hit that gap of like, do you want guys playing in the preseason at all? Sean McVay obviously is very famous for he just says fuck the preseason. He said we're gonna practice hard and then we'll pull up week one. Versus you have guys like Sean Payne, Andy Reid historically like no we playing all our guys. They're doing the standard couple drives, then a quarter, half in the preseason. Where do you fall on that?
I don't want to see my team starters out there for the preseason. I know the Ravens ran the first team O line out there, which is fine. I think they got like a drive maybe, which that's fine, you know, whatever. But for the most part, I don't want to see the starters out there. It's like plant that changed J.K. Dobbins' career. Um, and you that's always like a possibility when you putting guys out there and football equipment on a football field. Like injuries can happen. You know, JJ McCarthy missed his rookie season because of that. Um,
Yeah.
and obviously he had to be out there. That was just like a terrible that's just a bad time thing that happened. But nonetheless,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't want to see my starters out there. And it's like for me personally, I don't any preseason games I do find myself watching is not to see the starters, it's to see these guys. I've watched football long enough. I've watched Hard Knocks long enough and documentaries and all of that. It's to see the guys that, are competing for a job, that are competing for their
Mm-hmm.
livelihood, or to see guys that may flash with teams and, that team doesn't really have a spot for you, but you play really well. So maybe make the practice squad or you impressed teams around the league to get a shot. Like that's more so what I like from the preseason is to see guys really compete to get a job because these motherfuckers obviously like we all know about the multimillionaire guys that are guaranteed a spot, whether they're good or bad. But it's the guys out there it's the guys out there that's fucking, living in a one bedroom apartment that don't really have any other options than football, and their only hope is to put together enough, good tape to get a shot to make fucking $10,000, $20,000 being on the practice squad and keep their head above water. So that's more so what I find interesting from the preseason than getting a drive of my starting quarterback.
No, I totally agree. I had actually heard the other day, and it never really. This is again. I've never been the college football guy historically, but somebody who's really into college football was talking. He's like, an abolish the preseason kind of guy, and I don't really love that because I do think there's been enough stories of guys who like Denver's I was 3 and 4. But when Denver went back to back in 97 and 98, the only first round pick on the roster was Elway. Like everybody else was this like miracle story. Like Shannon Sharp was 6th round TD. Schlereth, like all these guys were not noteworthy. Rod Smith undrafted. And I don't want to take away those storylines. And they've happened enough in NFL history. I think they're really cool. And they add to the story of it. But he did bring up a good point where he's like, college kids don't have it. College kids have no preseason game. They have even less practice time. They're in school. So I'll ask you really quick before we go on to the next one is like, where do you like, I guess that feel of because college kids don't do preseason, they just jump right into week one. Would you ever totally get rid of the preseason for the NFL the same way?
I don't think you can. It's just a different level of physicality and more commitment than you're playing. Like a fucking college kid may play 12 games in a season. Like
Mm-hmm.
like you still have a month and a half of football left at that rate in the NFL. So it's like
Yeah.
you just can't do it physically. Like there's already enough soft tissue injuries to start camps. There's already enough, soft tissue and ligament issues going on early in seasons. It's like you gotta kind of condition these guys as best as you can, at least because we know practicing has changed in the NFL, how hard you can go has changed, and just different things like that. So it's like they're playing a physical game. We're probably a few years away from 18 games. So it's
That's
like
crazy.
you can't
It's gonna
really
happen,
you
but it's crazy.
can't really cancel the preseason because it's like and you want to see where guys are at too. Like you want to
Yeah.
see who can make this team that can help us out that you might just didn't see coming. So it's also that element.
Mm-hmm. Uh, the biggest preseason game thus far is Shador starting for the Browns. Now, obviously, there's
Hmm.
been a bunch of factors that went into it. Whether, and my stance really is like, I don't really care how we got to the point. I like the fact that he got the chance to start. I like the fact that he got a chance to show himself. And something you and I have talked about over the years is like, we all know there is more good quarterbacks than there's probably ever been in the NFL. Even a guy
Yeah.
like Kyler Murray is like he is a really good quarterback. There's obviously some limitations there, and the team has not always been great. But as many good quarterbacks as there are, you see consistently a lot of bad quarterback play week in, week out. And so to me, with Shador is like the biggest thing is as big as the NFL is, to our first topic, you gotta root for Shador to me the same way I would root for him specifically. So I think the story's cool, and B, we just need more good quarterbacks in the NFL. The more teams, I don't think the Titans. I think the Titans are a year plus away. I think they just don't have the talent on the roster yet. But I think they're a far more exciting team this year with Cam Ward versus Will Levis. I think the Jets are far more. I don't think they're making the playoffs, but they're far more interesting with Justin Fields, who I do think was able to kind of find himself a little in Pittsburgh versus 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
So where are you on Shador and just like the concept of like just more getting more good quarterback play out there league wide?
As far as Shador, it was dope to see how he performed on was it Friday night, and
Yeah,
I think that that's something for him personally to build on as he gets continues to get his feet wet into the league. Um, on the concept of like good quarterback play, it's like we're getting a team's at least one team in the NFL is getting a new quarterback every year. So there's
yeah,
always that turnover. And new guys are coming into the league continuously. The game's changed so much. And you hear about like QB development, you heard Brady talk about it, I think it was last year, and you hear other guys talk about the development of QBs. And we watch a lot of bad football every week. Like the fact
yeah,
that's why the concept, or at least like the whole conversation of like football being king and the NFL being king is as true as it is very funny because no other sport I don't think gives you as much bad product on a weekly basis as the NFL does. So it's like, especially because it's less games than the other leagues. So
yeah.
so there's there's this thing where it's like you have quarterbacks come into the league, so much pressure on them. You know, the weight of a city is put on their shoulders. Many excel, many fail. But I just think that there's so few good coaching in the league, and
Yeah.
you bring in these young quarterbacks, and it's like you either throw them out there with the expectation that they're either going to sink or fail, or you let them sit and then throw them out there. And it's just like there's really no perfect way to measure who's going to be successful or not, but you can measure the coaching staff, you can measure the culture of the team and things like that. And I think when you look at like a CJ Stroud's rookie year, like no one necessarily seen that coming. You could hope
Mhm.
for it if you were a fan of CJ Stroud, um, but didn't necessarily see that coming because Houston was just a wreck for so long. And then you look at the situation in Chicago where Caleb's coming in and a lot of hype around him. He has his detractors, but many people think he'll be successful. And the coaching staff was just a disaster last year, and he wasn't in the space to excel at what he's good at and do the things he's good at. And I just think that when you look at Shador's case, that's a great coaching staff that he's going to be with, but I don't think that he's necessarily someone they want to invest in. I think that the organization believes their real future quarterback is in the 2026 draft. And it's one of those things where this this league you either have a guy or you don't. And you can kind
Mhm.
of work around not having a guy, but he has to be something. And it's like it's very particular. All of that shit is very particular.
No, the fit is I call it the maturization of a football fan is when you do realize like your coaches Matt. Yes, if you end up with like a Hall of Fame player, like there's some guys who just break the mold and like they're gonna kind of succeed anywhere. Cool.
Hmm.
There's 50 guys on a roster. The reality is 40 of them really need good coaching. And so when you mature as a football fan, you're like, okay, cool. We got so and so as our coach. That's way more important than having like this linebacker or having this receiver. Like those make
Right.
much long term impacts. Um, I'll do two quick ones with you here for quarterbacks. Uh, this isn't my take, but I think it's really good. Is Shador's best opportunity if he does play well and the Browns decide that he's not on the roster? Uh, if the Rams were to trade a fourth round pick for him, and it doesn't have to be for this year. Obviously, Stafford is, and I like Stafford a lot. Stafford's back is messed up. He's in something that I literally just learned about today. That sounds like it's experimental science to try to fix his back, which is just not a good sign for a 37-year-old who's been taking as many hits as basically any quarterback we've ever seen.
Hmm.
Um, and so thoughts on that, which also would be a great situation for him. It'd be just a real simple. Have you lost any faith in Caleb has not had the most stellar of offseason highlights. I do think some of them are being overblown, but you said specifically yourself coming out of college, you're like, he's just a boomer bust guy. Like you either see him being in like that top four, top five pedigree, or you just see it going sideways. Have you lost any faith yourself in it potentially going sideways?
No, I don't. I haven't been given any reason to think it'll go sideways for him. I've not taken anything from any, off-season videos or any rumors, anything like that. It's just a matter of what's done on the field. That's all that really matters. And then in the case of for Shador, I look at that and say either if it's the Rams, great, of course, but he's going to get an opportunity. It's not there,
Mm-hmm.
but the important thing is that he leaves no doubt that he belongs in the league at some level, be it a backup, be it a guy that you can just kind of keep on the depth chart to have, or a starter. But it's important that he shows he belongs. And he did that Friday, and it's up to him to just build on that. Um, but was, you know, I do think that when we talk about Caleb, that it's important that he's put in a space to excel. He's put in a space to do what he does best and not just say here, lead the offense and make some shit happen. Because that happened a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times last year, and I just don't think that's beneficial to his talent or to that team that has a lot of talent and is capable of winning games. And that's what you don't want because you don't get a lot of opportunities to put together a fucking playoff roster, let alone a team that can at least be compete for the playoffs. So it's like in the Bears case, you don't want to waste that with a guy that I still think can be a top quarterback in the league.
No, 1,000%. I got we have our preview show coming up here pretty soon. Is spoiler, I got the Bears. I have the Bears doing well. I think a lot of the stuff that's come out is I think we spoke a couple weeks ago about it. I was like that entire team complained about accountability. So Ben Johnson holding everybody accountable, to me, there's you can spin that in a negative context, but like, oh, guys are messing up. To me, I'm like, that's exactly what they all said they wanted because they have the talent, they've got the guys that can do it. They just want to make sure, like, hey, you're not running your route right. All right, cool. Get off until you're ready to run your route right. Like, that's how you build winning habits. That's how you build winning cultures. Is your coach can't always be your best friend, Mike McDaniel. That was unnecessary. My bad, Mike. Hey man, I appreciate you. I think he's get fired this year, but that's for another day.
Yeah, that team's a disaster.
Man, that was infuriating. Terry Hill said he just learned the playbook. He had anyway, long conversation for another day,
If
man.
that shit goes
Appreciate you
south,
as
he's
always.
he's gonna be back on the Chiefs by November.
Don't say that. Send his ass to Vegas.
I'm just saying.
Send him anywhere else. 30 other teams he can go to. He can't go to Denver. He can't go to Kansas City. Anywhere else, fair game. Yeah, you go to LA. Send him to Vegas. Y'all want to see something chaotic? Send Tyreek Hill's ass to Vegas.
It's the
Hey man,
last thing the
appreciate
Raiders
you as
need.
always. Don't forget, you can always check Tony out. Group Chat Podcast every single Sunday. Go check us out. YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, wherever you get your podcasts. Appreciate you, bro.
Peace.
I mean, if you want to be a part of one of the coolest, most unique communities, don't forget to like and subscribe.